I want you to just try to picture the Sandboy Mountains down in Latimer County, Oklahoma.
Oh, yeah, it is notoriously rugged out there.
It really is. Specifically, there's this unforgiving stretch of wilderness that locals call Panola Mountain. So it's October 17th, 2009.
Right in the middle of autumn.
Exactly. I want you to close your eyes and just put yourself there for a second. The air is like biting cold. It smells of wet cedar and damp earth, decaying leaves after days of these heavy, just relentless rainstorms.
Just that really heavy, suffocating kind of dampness.
Yeah, exactly. And it's nightfall. The darkness out there is absolute. So a team of law enforcement officers are slowly navigating this treacherous, muddy, one-lane dirt road.
Which is terrifying in the dark.
Completely. And right there, teetering on the edge of a 3-foot drop-off, is a locked, abandoned pickup truck.
So a responding deputy, he walks up to the driver's side, right? And he sweeps his flashlight beam through the window.
Thinking he's going to find a body, probably.
Right, he expects to find someone slumped over the steering wheel. But he doesn't. Instead, he hears this faint, just desperate scratching sound coming from the back seat.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so he takes his baton, shatters the truck's window, and he pulls out this tiny, emaciated dog. It had been trapped in there for days, just slowly starving to death, literally clinging to the absolute brink of life.
That is so incredibly bleak. Well, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are opening up the raw case file of the Jamison family.
It's a heavy one today.
It really is. We're looking at 44-year-old Bobby, 40-year-old Sherilyn, and their 6-year-old daughter, Madison. We're laying all the original source material out on the table for you today.
We've got the original Latimer County Sheriff's reports, right?
Yep. The sheriff's reports, the GPS coordinates we extracted from the family's abandoned devices, and the highly contested medical examiner's autopsy documents.
Because our mission today is to, well, we want to treat you like a fellow investigator. We're going to walk you through this timeline to try and make sense of the impossible.
Because it really feels impossible when you look at it.
It does. I mean, if you look at the raw data, this case is just a labyrinth of physical contradictions. We're dealing with bizarre clues, documented descents into severe paranoia, and ultimately a crime scene that completely defies geographical and physical logic.
Let's start with that first major contradiction, which happens the minute police catalog the inventory of that abandoned truck.
Right, the stuff they left behind.
Exactly. So the doors are locked, which, implies a deliberate exit. But the keys, they're still sitting right there in the ignition.
Which makes no sense if you're deliberately locking it.
Right. And the family's heavy winter coats are just left behind in the freezing weather. Sherilyn's purse is sitting on the seat. A BlackBerry phone, which was equipped with GPS, is just left behind.
And then it gets even weirder, because a deputy reaches under the seat and pulls out a bank bag.
Oh, yeah.
Inside is a staggering $32,000 in cold, hard cash.
Just sitting under the seat of a locked truck.
Exactly. Think about the psychology of that for a moment. You have all the items necessary for survival, for communication, and for escape, just totally abandoned in the middle of nowhere.
But the most disturbing piece of evidence investigators found wasn't even the money.
No, it wasn't. It was this 7-page handwritten letter from Sherilyn to her husband, Bobby.
I read the transcript of this letter, and it is just a searingly toxic document. I mean, she explicitly calls him a monster and a toxic person.
It's incredibly heavy.
Yeah, she begs for forgiveness for things she says offended God and the Holy Spirit, which really hints at this deep religious fixation they were dealing with.
Right, but then she pivots to just sheer anger.
Exactly. She states that Bobby beat her spine with such force she is lucky she didn't have a heart attack or become paralyzed. She references him being in prison for attempted murder.
And then she writes this incredibly haunting line.
Yeah, she says she would rather their 6-year-old daughter Madison be raised in foster care than have a dead mother.
Wow. That's chilling.
It is. But let's pause here and interrogate this, because the immediate assumption that jumped into the minds of the public and the media back in 2009 was murder-suicide.
Sure, it's an easy narrative to grab onto.
Right. A violently abusive marriage reaches a boiling point in the woods, and one of them ends it all. But put yourself in the shoes of a detective working a crime scene.
You have to look at the physical space.
Exactly. If you are walking into the freezing woods to end your life, or, if you are fleeing an abusive spouse to start over, why on earth do you lock your beloved family dog inside the car to slowly starve to death?
Especially since Madison adored that dog.
Right. And why abandon 32 grand in cash?
Well, I have to defend the initial police reflex for just a second
I
here.
was sure. Go ahead.
To a responding rural officer in 2009, a 7-page manifesto detailing physical abuse and fearing for a child's life. That looks like textbook domestic escalation.
That's true. It fits the pattern.
It's just the most statistically probable scenario when you find an abandoned vehicle with a family missing. However, you are entirely correct that the physical evidence breaks that theory apart.
It just doesn't align.
No, because if you are running away to start a new life and escape abuse, you take the $32,000. If you are going into the woods to end your life, you at least open the car door and let the dog go free.
Right, you don't condemn the dog.
Exactly. The physical reality of the truck completely contradicts the psychological profile of the letter.
So if the evidence tells us they didn't walk away voluntarily and they didn't plan to die out there, we have to figure out what led them up that mountain in the first place.
You have to rewind a bit.
Yeah, we have to look at the rapidly deteriorating world the Jamisons were trapped in before October of 2009.
And their descent was steep, and it was multifaceted. Bobby, he used to be known as a smart, creative
He
guy.
had a pretty normal life before.
Right, but in 2003, he suffered this crippling back injury in a car accident. He was left in chronic, agonizing pain, which led to a severe painkiller addiction.
And Sherilyn was struggling too.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Sherilyn had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, severe depression, and ADHD. And over time, she completely stopped taking her prescribed medication.
Which is a recipe for disaster. We need to talk about what happens to the human brain when physical ruin collides with financial ruin.
It's a total collapse.
Neither of them could hold down a job anymore. They were on the verge of losing their beautiful lake house in Eufaula, Oklahoma. But then in 2007, they get a $64,000 settlement from Bobby's car accident lawsuit.
And they split it evenly, right?
Exactly, 32 grand each, which perfectly explains the stack of cash found under the truck seat. It was, quite literally, their entire life savings.
And when people run out of options and resources like that, extreme financial stress physically rewires the brain's threat detection centers.
You just start seeing enemies everywhere?
Yeah, and the isolation was compounding. Bobby engaged in this bitter, toxic feud with his own father, Bob Jamison, over a gas station business.
It got really ugly, didn't it?
It escalated to the point where Sherilyn was spreading rumors that Bob was in the Mexican mafia. Bobby even filed a protective order against his own father, claiming Bob tried to run him over with a vehicle.
So by the late summer of 2009, this family was just in a state of absolute crisis.
Total crisis.
Sherilyn had lost custody of an older son from a previous marriage due to allegations of physical abuse. And then in September, just a month before they vanished, she attempted suicide and was hospitalized for 3 weeks.
And this is where the raw facts of the case file take a deeply unsettling turn into the supernatural.
This part is so wild to me.
The psychology at play here closely resembles a phenomenon known as shared psychotic disorder, or folie-à-deux.
Oh.
When two isolated people with untreated mental health issues feed off each other's delusions, those delusions become their shared reality.
They start validating each other's hallucinations.
Exactly. They were planning to buy off-grid land and live in a shipping container. That container was just sitting in their driveway, and Sherilyn started spray painting these erratic, terrifying messages on it. Things like, witches don't like their black cat killed.
And Bobby was spiraling right alongside her. I mean, he was actively asking a local pastor where he could purchase demon-killing bullets.
Which is just terrifying.
Yeah, he was reading a satanic Bible, telling friends he needed to learn how to exorcise malevolent spirits from their home. Sherilyn was telling people that their 6-year-old daughter was having regular conversations with the ghost of Sherilyn's deceased sister.
It just consumed their entire household.
Right. A family friend even reported visiting their house feeling instantly physically sick and claiming she watched a huge gray mist slowly float down the Jamison staircase.
We really have to view this not as a ghost story, but as a severe medical emergency.
Oh, 100%.
You have genuine, untreated mental illness violently colliding with heavy drug dependency. Their ability to distinguish between a real-world threat like a foreclosed mortgage or an angry family member and an imaginary demon had completely dissolved.
Yeah, I like to think of their mental state like driving a car with a shattered windshield.
That's a good way to put it.
Like every shadow looks like an oncoming truck, every crack in the glass distorts your vision, and eventually you steer right off a cliff just trying to avoid things that aren't actually there.
Wow, yeah.
That was the reality they woke up to on the morning of October 8th, 2009, the day they drove into the Sandboy Mountains.
And the timeline for that specific morning is incredibly precise, and it creates another massive contradiction.
Walk us through that morning.
So at 8 a.m., Bobby makes a phone call to a real estate agent named Peggy. He is negotiating to buy a 40-acre plot of off-grid land up on Panola Mountain.
Okay, so he's doing business.
Right, and the call lasts for 2 full hours. And according to Peggy, Bobby sounds totally normal. He is lucid, he's excited about moving and homeschooling Madison, and he's asking highly detailed, logical questions about the property.
But then we pull the home surveillance footage from just 30 minutes after that call ends.
Yeah, the contrast is jarring.
From 10:30 a.m. to 11:00 a.m., the cameras capture Bobby and Sherilyn walking back and forth from their house to their pickup truck, over and over again. But they're barely carrying anything.
Just kind of wandering.
Yeah, their movements are entirely devoid of purpose. They walk in total silence, just pacing, staring blankly.
When the media eventually got hold of these security clips, they immediately dubbed it the trance video.
I remember seeing it everywhere.
Yeah, it heavily promoted the theory that the Jamisons were in a drug-induced stupor.
But there is one crucial detail in that footage. At one point, Sherilyn is seen carrying a brown briefcase.
Right, the briefcase. Keep that in mind, because when the truck is later found abandoned on the mountain, that brown briefcase is entirely missing from the crime scene, along with Sherilyn's registered .22 caliber handgun.
I'm going to throw a massive red flag on the play right here, though. I heavily pushed back on this trance or drug stupor theory that everyone accepted as gospel back then.
Why is that?
Because Bobby just conducted a highly complex 2-hour negotiation about land acquisition and zoning. You do not switch from high-level real estate planning to a mindless zombie stupor in 30 minutes without introducing a massive immediate chemical catalyst.
I get that, but you have to look at it from the perspective of law enforcement in 2009.
Fair enough.
You have a couple with a known history of self-medicating and extreme paranoia, pacing aimlessly in their driveway. The immediate reflex for a rural cop is methamphetamine use, erratic pacing, and repetitive, pointless tasks. That looks exactly like tweaking. It is a very easy box to check.
I see why they went there.
But I agree with your assessment of the timeline. The biology of a 2-hour lucid phone call directly abutting a total catatonic state is highly improbable. It is far more likely they were simply exhausted, stressed, and methodically packing for a major trip.
Regardless of their state of mind, they get in the truck, they drive up the mountain. Around noon, they stop and have a totally normal, coherent 45-minute conversation with a local landowner named Dan Clemens.
Right, just a normal chat.
Yeah, Dan gives them directions to the specific coordinates of the land they want to buy. And at 2:51 p.m., using that BlackBerry phone, they take a photograph.
It is the final known moment of the Jamison family.
It's so sad.
It's a candid photo of little Madison. She's standing in the woods, arms crossed, looking directly at the camera. Her mouth is slightly open, like she's in the middle of talking to whoever is holding the phone.
And then they just vanish. The truck is found facing downhill, as if they had finished looking at the land and were turning around to leave.
But they never left.
No. The doors are locked, the dog is trapped inside, the life savings hidden under the seat, the GPS just abandoned.
And for 4 agonizing years, that mountain keeps its secrets. Massive search parties comb the area. Law enforcement and volunteers spend weeks hacking through mud, briars, and wet brush in a massive radius around the truck.
And they find absolutely nothing.
Nothing at all. Until November 16th, 2013. A local hunter named Tim Graham is out with his wife looking for deer signs.
So they're just out walking the woods.
Right. And Tim sees what he thinks is a weathered, discolored turtle shell, half buried in the damp autumn leaves. He bends down to pick it up.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's a human skull. And there is a small hole right near the forehead.
That's horrifying.
The hunter stops in his tracks. Then he sees another skull a few yards away, and then his wife spots a third, a tiny skull.
Oh no.
And it is missing 2 front teeth. She instantly remembers the missing posters from 4 years ago that were plastered all over the county. Madison's missing front teeth, the nightmare is confirmed, they finally found the Jamisons.
But as an investigator looking at the logistics of this crime scene, this is where the math completely breaks down for me. The remains were found 2.6 miles away from where the truck was abandoned.
Think about what 2.6 miles means in that specific environment.
It's not a walk in the park?
Not at all.
Yeah.
We are not talking about a paved walking trail or a treadmill. The Sandboy Mountains are notoriously rugged. Sheriff Beecham himself stated on the record that hiking that specific terrain would take a perfectly fit athlete, a half day of brutal exertion, hacking through dense, untamed brush and navigating steep elevation changes.
Exactly. So you have a man with a crippling back injury who can barely stand for long periods without severe pain. You have a woman recovering from extreme mental and physical distress.
And a 6-year-old child wearing street shoes.
Right. The physical reality dictates that they did not hike 2.6 miles into that wilderness under their own volition.
Which means someone forced them into that wilderness,
Mm.
or someone killed them at the truck and transported their bodies to that remote location.
So we have to figure out who else was there.
Exactly. If the family physically couldn't have walked into those woods alone, we have to look at who else was on that mountain to force them there. Now, law enforcement systematically ruled out the immediate circle.
Like the grandfather.
Right, the grandfather, Bob Jamison, was in hospice care and died 2 months later. He physically couldn't have done it. Then there was Kenneth Bellows, a known white supremacist who boarded with them and had threatened Sherilyn in the past.
He seems like a good suspect.
He does, but he had a rock-solid, verifiable alibi, placing him far away.
So this specific area of Panola Mountain was notoriously rough. It was known by locals as a haven for illegal dumping and heavy meth production.
It wasn't exactly a safe neighborhood.
No. Which brings our investigation back to Dan Clemens, the local landowner who lived just a quarter-mile from where the truck was found. He was the last person to admit seeing them alive.
If we trace the causality of Dan's timeline, his behavior is highly, highly suspicious.
Break that down for us.
Well, he claims he spoke to the family for 45 minutes on October 8th, a conversation ending around 12:45 p.m. But the GPS data from the Jamisons' abandoned phone shows they didn't arrive at the land coordinates until 2:15 p.m.
Wait, that is an hour and a half entirely unaccounted for, just a quarter-mile from Dan's property?
Exactly. Where were they during that gap?
And his actions after they vanish are even stranger. So fast forward a week to October 17th. Dan claims 2 unidentified men on ATVs approach him and tell him about an abandoned truck up the dirt road.
Just some random guys.
Right. So Dan goes to look and he realizes it perfectly matches the Jamisons' truck. But he doesn't call the cops.
He creates this very deliberate, calculated distance between himself and law enforcement. He waits. He calls the realtor, Peggy. He waits for a friend to arrive so they can go investigate the truck together.
Just delaying the police involvement.
Yeah, and even when he walks up to the vehicle and sees the starving dog inside, he still refuses to call the police himself. He makes Peggy, the realtor, place the 911 call.
You have to ask yourself, why are you so desperate to keep the police away from you if you are just a helpful neighbor checking on an abandoned vehicle?
Well, when you dig into the background of Dan Clemens, a massive bombshell drops on this case file.
This part blew my mind.
During a subsequent background check years later, investigators discovered that a Dan Clemens of the exact same age was arrested in Oklahoma in 2017.
For what?
The charge was a murder that took place in California back in 1997. He allegedly shot a man, stolen his truck, fled across state lines, and lived entirely off the grid under a fake name for decades.
That is just insane.
He eventually pled no contest to voluntary manslaughter for that 1997 crime.
So he shot a man and stole his truck, and he was living under an assumed identity off the grid, literally a quarter-mile from where the Jamisons vanished from their truck.
It's terrifying.
The original police reports on the Jamison case from 2009 claim they thoroughly checked Dan Clemens with negative results. But you have to wonder, did they know his true identity back then? Did they know they were interviewing a fugitive hiding out on the mountain?
It introduces a terrifying variable into this mystery. Imagine a fugitive living off the grid. He sees a family driving up the mountain, waving around a brown briefcase, openly discussing a $32,000 cash land purchase.
The financial motive writes itself right there.
It really does. The sheriff at the time, Israel Beecham, stated on the record before retiring that he firmly believes it was a double murder, with little Madison left to die of exposure in the elements. His final advice to anyone looking at this case was simple: follow the money.
This brings us to the agonizing bureaucratic tragedy of this entire deep dive. Right now, as we speak, this case is frozen in absolute legal limbo.
Entirely stalled.
Because of a paperwork technicality.
Let's explain the forensic science behind why this case is stalled. When human remains are exposed to harsh elements and animal activity for 4 entire years, nature strips away all the soft tissue.
There's just not much left.
Right. You lose the cartilage, you lose the organs, you lose the hyoid bone in the neck. which means a medical examiner loses the ability to detect toxins, they can't find soft tissue stab wounds, and they can't prove strangulation.
So they are completely in the dark.
Unless a bullet happens to nick a bone, a skeletal remain cannot tell you how it died. Because of that biological reality, the medical examiner had no choice but to classify their cause of death on the official certificates as undetermined.
Think about the legal ramifications of that single word, undetermined. Without a classification of homicide, there is no active murder investigation.
The police are totally hamstrung.
They really are. They cannot compel suspects to sit for interviews. They cannot execute search warrants on properties of interest. The bureaucracy simply dictates that it is a closed matter. The evidence screams foul play, but the paperwork ties the hands of the investigators.
It is the ultimate catch-22 of the justice system. We have missing weapons, missing briefcases, impossible geographical movements, and a known violent fugitive living a quarter-mile away.
But legally, no crime has occurred. I want to leave you with a chilling thought to mull over tonight. The person who did this, they didn't pull off a brilliant masterclass cover-up. They made massive mistakes.
Huge mistakes.
They left the GPS behind to track their timeline. They missed the $32,000 sitting right under the seat. They left the truck facing the wrong way. But they are getting away with murder right now simply because the elements destroyed the evidence and the medical examiner's hands were tied.
The killer is still out there. They know the exact sequence of events that took a vulnerable family from a hopeful real estate negotiation to a shallow grave 2.6 miles deep in the brutal wilderness.
They know exactly what happened to that brown briefcase. They know where Sherilyn's .22 caliber gun is buried or hidden. And they are sleeping soundly tonight, knowing that the law isn't even looking for them anymore.
The mountain keeps its secrets, but someone down here knows the truth of how they got there.
So, if you know anything about the shadows on Panola Mountain, if you know what actually happened to Bobby, Sherilyn, and little Madison Jamison, the Latimer County Sheriff's Office is waiting for your call.